Firstly, I've got to give a big shout out to my buddy Chris Faber on CanucksArmy.com. He does some great work, always has, and he published an article that I want to kind of rip off in this video, but it's not really ripping off because it's not really like I'm ripping off him per se, it's mostly just the idea. Chris, please don't feel bad. I'm doing the same thing here on YouTube as you did on the article. Here's a piece published by Faber 2 days ago on July 20th, 2022. This is what Vasili Podkolzin says on Andrei Kuzmenko jumping into the top 9, Cale Makar being a beast, and giving the quote-unquote cutest speech at rookie night. Now, Faber himself did not interview Vasili Podkolzin. Instead, there was an interview done with Pavel Lysenkov of matvhtv.ru. Faber's piece on Canucks Army translates a lot of those quotes into English, and it publishes it on a Canucks Central platform, so Canucks fans can go out there and read it and see what it is their young guy is saying. But what I wanted to do is go over onto the original piece as well. It's also linked in this Canucks Army article, and translate these quotes via the Google machine too, so we can make a video about this interview. Here is the article on... Look, for the sake of reading it like it is, phonetically speaking, with an anglicized accent, let's just say matchtv.ru, and we'll talk about what this article is here. Pavel Lysenkov says, "Here is the everyday life of our hockey player in Canada." The quote in the title of the piece says, "The freshman dinner cost me $6,000. I pushed a Russian toast there." Now, that's probably something lost in translation, but the other quotes are a lot more legible when it comes to what the translation machine spews out. "I talked with Vasili during the 3-on-3 tournament, which was held in Balashika. Around that same time after that, the Vancouver Canucks signed Ilya Mikheyev, but Andrei Kuzmenko also joined the team too. By the way, they say that the first line between the Canucks might actually look like Kuzmenko, Pettersson, and Mikheyev." Now, I don't know who else is saying that actually, but it is cool for these Russian news outlets to say, hey, our guys are going to Vancouver. The Canucks didn't really have too much of a great track record with Russian players in the past few years. I mean, Goldolbin was here, and he wasn't really all too great, and if you even go back further than that, I mean, you have Sergei Jiricek, and yeah, I mean, Pavel Bure was good, but he was here 3 decades ago. There hasn't really been too much of a great Russian presence on the Canucks since then. So it's understandable to see why this Russian outlet's going out there saying, yeah, no, lots of Russians heading over to Vancouver nowadays. Let's go into some of the quotes that the article goes out there and presents. The interviewer asks, "Hey, do fans in Vancouver recognize you, Vasili?" He says it happens. It makes sense, especially after the game if you go somewhere for dinner. But Russian fans are not the same as they are in Canada. Maybe I haven't understood all the Canucks fans for another year, but we somehow have everything with a soul. Everything is our own and dear. I'm very glad to chat in Russian with anyone, and there are super fans in terms of hockey. I'm just sick of this topic, maybe in a good way. The interview then goes over and it asks him, hey, if you take all 32 NHL clubs and you do a 3v3 tournament between them, who would win? If you count for this season, Colorado is the best skating team. I'm talking about the speed of the game. I would also say Vegas has a chance too. Not Edmonton, the interviewer asks, with McDavid and Draisaitl? Good question, Vasili replies. Maybe, but if you choose, I would not bet on Edmonton. They talk a little bit more about 3v3 hockey because they're doing a 3v3 tournament. That's where the interviewer actually was able to meet with Podkolzin. Here's another question asked to Podkolzin. Now, I'm going to have to translate this one a little bit more myself, but the original translation says, did you communicate with Vancouver before signing a contract with Andrei Kuzmenko? The opinion of the Russian hockey player could be interesting. Now, what I think the actual question is, did Vancouver talk to you before they sign a contract with Kuzmenko? Not did you sign a contract with Kuzmenko, because players don't sign contracts with players. That's not really a thing that happens in the NHL. When we finished the playoffs in the AHL, because you gotta remember, Vasili Podkolzin was sent down, I flew to Vancouver. I had 3 days to finish my business, to pack my things. I went for dinner with my wife, and the team owner, GM, and someone else were sitting at the next table. I approached them and said hello. They asked me, what can you tell us about Andrei Kuzmenko? Do you think that he can help us? I replied and I said he would definitely help. After that, Kuzi and I talked on the phone, and that's it. He is in Vancouver. What got him into the Canucks? The interviewer asks. He chose from a bunch of teams in the NHL. Podkolzin says that Kuzmenko was hooked on the attitude towards him. Podkolzin says that Kuzmenko said that all the leaders of the club came to him although they were on vacation. It's also a very good city, which is important too. The article then writes that you're right about that relationship. In a situation like yours, when you're a young guy that doesn't have glasses, they could be sent to a farm club. But you were put on the basis of Vancouver, pretty much meaning that, yeah, no, you weren't just sent down, you were actually given an opportunity. Podkolzin says, yeah, I'm grateful to the club for trusting me. The interview then gets into a discussion about Bruce Boudreau. What's a feature of Boudreau that is a little bit different from all the other coaches? Podkolzin says he has an individual approach to each player. He's a very smart coach. He understands your condition, and at the same time, he is always ready to communicate. Maybe this was not always the case in Russia. Even though in SKA St. Petersburg I could go up to anybody and talk to them, but Boudreau literally demands and he asks you, if you have any questions, no matter what, be sure to come to my office and talk. I understand that you're in your first season, so I'm always ready to help. Podkolzin says they actually had conversations with Boudreau about Alex Ovechkin, with whom he worked in the 2000s with the Capitals. Yes, in those years Alexander was young, and so Bruce told Ovechkin what worked and what he did. Even now, when Vancouver is playing against Washington, Boudreau and Ovechkin will greet each other in the rehearsal. They have a very good relationship. The next part of the article is a pretty interesting transcription of a short conversation they had about where Podkolzin lives. It's kind of funny. If you know the Vancouver area, you know what Rogers Arena looks like, I think most of you do, you're going to be able to paint a mental picture in your head as to what's going on when I read this stuff right here. Where is the best place to live in Vancouver? Where do you choose an apartment for a beginner? Podkolzin says, I live right in the Canucks arena. In terms of, there's an arena, and there's a skyscraper that stands right next to it. It has apartments, and I live there. I went down to the ground floor, and already in the locker room. For the first season in the NHL, this is a great living space. Is it a small apartment? It's got 2 bedrooms and a small hallway. It's a normal apartment. How much is the rent? Per month, $2,300 Canadian dollars. Now, I'm just going to say this, $2,300 for a 2-bedroom apartment at Rogers Arena? Honestly, I thought it would be a bit more. That's my initial hunch on that, but it's 103,000 rubles at the exchange rate, not that expensive by North American standards. It's very good, but I think there are benefits from the club because the apartment belongs to the owner of the Canucks, Francesco Aquilini, which, I mean, yeah, everybody kind of knows that that's the place, right? That's where all their AHL call-ups stay, and it's where Podkolzin stays too. Do you think Kuzmenko will stay there too? I think yeah, Podkolzin says. Is it a pity that he won't be able to qualify for the Calder Trophy since he's already 26 years old? But can he be good? I believe that he will shoot. Now, this is kind of where the translation gets a little bit wonky. There are arguments of those who are against Kuzmenko is lazy, he does not work well in defense, he has no speed. What do you say to those critics, Podkolzin? Pod replies, Kuzmenko in Vancouver will explain what I need to do, and he'll do it. And where it will go? He came to play in the NHL and he will try. I'm sure that everything will be fine. And to whom can Kuzmenko be put in the top 3? What in the world does that mean? Oh boy. Oh, the top line, that's what they mean. Okay. Yeah, can Kuzmenko be placed on the top line? Kuzia plays on the left, and there's usually right-handed players that play on the right, so it's not really known how it will be, but I myself am interested. The next few comments go over different players around the NHL. Cale Makar, he talks about Igor Shesterkin. Podkolzin gives his opinion on each of those, but then the conversation goes back over to Vancouver-related things. Have you already had your rookie dinner? Yes, Podkolzin said. It passed when we left Nashville. What did you do? Our Swede, Niels Höglander, sang a song, and I was told just to make a toast. I proposed a Russian toast, but in English. Everyone clapped and praised me. This is the cutest toast that we have heard in a while. How much did the table cost you and your team? Did you pay for 2? For 4. There were 2 older guys who hadn't gone through the novice rite before. We paid, it seems, $6,000. It's good that you didn't walk like in Boston. Yeah, I remember when I checked on the internet, when the guys after winning the Stanley Cup walked for $156,000, but in Vancouver, we went pretty light. Finally, to end off the interview, there is a conversation about what happened in Ukraine and how it's affecting players that are in Russia. Were you somehow protected from pressure with the club when the international situation worsened after February 24th? Podkolzin says there was not a bodyguard assigned to him. The only thing is that there are security guards who travel in Vancouver who came with. They said this, if there are any problems, speak up right away. However, he did not notice anything at all, so yes, the guys on the team on the first day probably will ask around what happened, and I reply that I don't know much. Somehow it all ended there. Then the older guys were interested too. How's your family there, Vasili? I replied that so far everything is fine. So I have support in Vancouver, and that helps. Talk in the comments your thoughts about Vasili Podkolzin and this interview. The link will be in the description to the original Russian piece. You can translate it on Google Chrome if you just right-click and click Translate to English. And if you want to support local Canucks journalism going out there and doing stuff like this, hey, Chris Faber's article will also be in the description summarizing a lot of these quotes as well. Talk in the comments your thoughts about Vasili Podkolzin and the thoughts that he had on the team. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 9, and bye.